Hey, it's Jason and
Travis.
Travis. We're the QBs on Wheels, and we're gonna do a special episode tonight, dedicated to fantasy football. Travis has a mountain of fantasy football trophies in his room. Most of them are made out of aluminum foil, but that's okay. But regardless, what we're gonna do is a little bit of a Q&A session. I'll ask the questions. Travis will give us his fantasy wisdom, and hopefully you'll pick up some good tips. All right, question number one. When you are, oh, and by the way, Travis does not know the questions in advance, so he's gonna have to pull it right out of his butt. But question number one. It's the first round. Are you one that typically goes for a running back, a wide receiver, a QB, or you jump right in and go for the kicker?
If the kicker, um, what I do is if one of the top five running backs are on the field, I mean on the board, I usually go for running backs first round
Okay.
because, uh, because there's not a crazy amount of running backs that can get you double digit points every week, so that's a big deal. And I mean, you can go second round, maybe third, but I wouldn't go later than the third. In my opinion, I'd pick a running back first round.
First round. Okay.
Well, it also depends on when your draft pick. If I would pick like first round, fifth pick, I would definitely go for running back. But if it's like first round, 12th pick, I think I might go for the best wide receiver. To be honest with you.
Okay. Interesting. So mid round or early, you're gonna get one of the top five running backs, and then late you might go for one of the top two or three receivers,
Yeah,
assuming that they haven't been picked yet.
exactly.
All right. So who are your top three running backs?
My top three.
Yep.
Well, if Ezekiel Elliott ever gets his butt paid, not not so much in order, but Saquon Barkley, um, Zeke Elliott, and Todd Gurley. And I would put Le'Veon Bell in there, but he missed the whole season, so I kind of want to see, and I don't know if I'd make that risk right away.
So he may be deeper in the first round or
Yeah,
high in the second round if but you wouldn't waste a top three, top five pick on him.
yeah, probably not, just because he missed that. If he didn't miss last year, he'd definitely be a top three pick. But
Yep.
since he missed that last year, I'd have to go with Saquon, Zeke, or Todd Gurley.
Okay. Okay, so it's late in the first round, and the bats are all chosen. Who are you gonna pick as your top three QBs?
Top three QBs. Um, if Aaron Rodgers is still on the board, definitely him. Now, most of the time later on in the first round, he's already picked. But then I would probably go Patrick Mahomes, Drew Brees, and to be honest with you, probably Baker Mayfield this year. I think I'd take a shot on. And I know people are going to be like, "What? Look at his receiving core, man." I think I'd take a chance on him.
Okay. So in your wideout core, who say give me 3 to 5 wideouts, who would you take? Let's say it's mid second round, and then number one and number two wideouts are already gone.
Number one,
Who would you say is already gone first of all?
number one, and number two is probably Julio Jones and Odell Beckham, and
Okay.
that's only because Antonio Brown playing with Ben Roethlisberger, he'd be in that top two. But now he's playing with Derek Carr. So he needs to prove a little bit before I would pick him first.
Yeah, I think his Antonio Brown's credit is slowing down too. Wideouts seem to need that time with their quarterback
Yeah.
during the preseason, and he has yet to take it down.
Yep.
Um, so yeah, unfortunately, and Antonio Brown's got problems head to toe. He's got frostbites on his feet, and he's having a conflict about his helmet that was
I know.
just settled today. He lost that. He's going to have to wear one of the NFL helmets.
Yeah, it's just a little drama with him, and it's not really the drama. He's a phenomenal player. It's just now that he's with Derek Carr, I think that's a little bit of risky pick. Not too risky, but I would go with Julio Jones and Odell Beckham if they're out the first.
Okay.
Now, if they're already out, my top three that I would look for would be DeAndre Hopkins, Devontae Adams, or Michael Thomas. It doesn't matter which one. If they're up in the air, I probably pick DeAndre Hopkins first. But Michael Thomas and Devontae Adams, they're like neck and neck in my opinion. They're phenomenal receivers.
Okay. All right, so we're down to around, say, 4. Would you, it's time to start picking some of the deeper ones, or you're going for a kicker, a tight end, a defense?
Now, round 4, if Travis Kelce, Zach Ertz, or maybe even Eric Ebron, if they're still on the table, I'm probably picking one of those guys round 4. But say they're not out, I'm going for my third wide receiver because
Okay.
if you can have the quarterback position is so deep that you don't need to pick a quarterback the first round unless it's Aaron Rodgers or Patrick Mahomes because they put up phenomenal numbers.
Okay.
You can settle for like a Matt Ryan, Dak Prescott, 6th, 7th round. You know what I mean? So you don't need them right away.
Okay.
But
Essentially, as long as you get a starting quarterback, you know they're going to secure a certain number of points.
Exactly.
Okay.
And running backs and wide receivers, honestly, in my opinion, are the top 2 I look for in the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd round. Now,
Okay.
like I said, in the 4th round, if them 3 tight ends that I mentioned, if they're still there, I'm taking them. But if not, I seriously might go for my 3rd receiver.
Okay.
And then in the 5th round, then I'd probably go for a tight end, such as maybe a George Kittle, Ingram from Giants, or a OJ Howard from Tampa Bay.
Okay.
I'd probably pick them in the 5th round.
Let me ask you this: in terms of a quarterback, would you rather have a quarterback who's the general on the field, or do you want a quarterback that maybe is on a losing team and they're always trying to fight for those extra yards? And we've seen, I remember even Matty Ryan in his first season put up a ton of yards, and it was because the Falcons were always behind. So he was always throwing to try to play catch up.
Well, let's just say this: last season, in my division, in my fantasy division, I got Drew Brees in the 7th round, and then I got Michael Thomas in the 3rd round. So I got the number 1 quarterback for the Saints and the number 1 wide receiver for the Saints. And that means every time they throw a touchdown, it's double the points. So that's how I look at quarter. I always like, now some people don't like this, but I like quarterback wide receiver tandems on my team if possible. It is hard to do it, but if possible, I'd like to do that.
Okay. Let's talk defense now. What teams are you looking at to say your top 3 defensive?
Now defense, The Bears. Bears are number one defense for me
Okay.
because ever since Khalil Mack got there, their defense has been unstoppable, like unstoppable. Uh, the Jaguars, if they could step it up, they didn't do very great last year, but the year before that they killed it. So I'm hoping that that little slump went away. So I like the Jaguars, Jags, Rams, Vikings. I think they're my top four that I would probably pick
Okay.
if they're still there. Now I usually pick them around the 8th round if they're still there. Now if I say it's the 6th round and I see one or two people picking defenses, I'll probably pick them a little earlier, maybe the end of the 6th, 7th.
Okay.
But yeah, defense for the most part, you can get lucky in the 8th, 9th round, but sometimes it's a little different.
I think part of it is you have to look at how your league scores defense.
Yeah.
As well, because some leagues it's mostly based on yards, reducing the number of yards attained by the opponent, and other ones they get so many more points for first fumbles, interceptions, and defensive touchdowns.
Right.
I think the other thing you want to take a look at is sometimes in some leagues, special teams scores count toward the defense.
Yeah.
That way, if you get a guy who's a great kick returner, that's gonna boost your score potentially. You get 3 or 4 touchdowns out of them in a season, and that's a big difference.
Right. I know my sleeper picks. I wanted to give a couple of sleeper picks that you can pick up in the late rounds, and I'm thinking these players are very smart to look at in the later rounds.
Okay.
I talked about him on last show. James Washington, with Antonio Brown out, I really think he's going to have a great season.
Yep.
Jalen Hurns, he looked phenomenal, and if he keeps up what he's doing, he's going to be a sleeper pick. Maybe a third wide receiver on your depth chart or a flex player. Calvin Ridley, he led the rookies in touchdowns and yards last season. And everybody always says about the second-year slump. I don't think this kid's going to have a second-year slump. He has too many good receivers. Julio is taking double, triple teams almost every play. And Mohamed Sanu is probably arguably the best second receiver out there. And Calvin Ridley's right there. So I really think that he could be a big sleeper this year, and you can get him in the later rounds. So, and don't sleep on Jason Witten. Just because he missed last year and he hasn't practiced for a year or so, and I really think he could do big things. And Zeke likes him. When he was still playing, Zeke, that was his security blanket. So I really think Jason Witten could be a sleeper tight end this year.
Yeah, I don't think Jason Witten would come back if he didn't see a possibility of a Super Bowl ring.
Yeah, I didn't think so either.
Yeah, I think that part of that whole idea is he could be the keystone in that offense, where you have your Amari Cooper and Zeke Elliott doing the bulk of the work, and Jason Witten picking up first downs on third, getting those tough short pass yardage, just to keep the defense honest. Yeah. And that's gonna open up things for the receivers and for Zeke.
Yeah, Jason Witten, he's not so much like this player I'm about to mention about him, Tony Gonzalez, but running routes and his hands, there's very similar attributes to Tony Gonzalez. So I think I think
Jason Witten I like because he's smart, and he's really a kind of a lieutenant on the field.
yeah,
He's out there directing traffic and throwing blocks,
yeah,
and that's something that reminds me of a couple of guys with the guy in the Patriots that his name is totally escaping me right now, Bennett.
Martellus.
Yeah, and there's just a handful of guys that make the team better just by having them on the field, even when their hands aren't on the ball.
Right.
That doesn't do much good for fantasy stats, but yeah, I'd like to see him have a good season.
Yeah. My next guy, sleeper, my last guy for the sleeper is Jordan Howard. He was the Bears running back last season, or for a couple different seasons, and they finally traded him for some ungodly reason. He's still in his 20s. I mean, this guy is a ball carrier, man. He can hit. He has some speed. He got some juke moves. He's got a couple things. So I'd watch out for the Eagles offensive line and Jordan Howard. I think that he might do something this year.
And the Eagles will run the ball if they have the ground game.
Exactly.
They're a team that will, if it's working, they'll give it to you 25 times a game.
Yeah. But I do know that if I was picking my fantasy team, like right now, I make a list of every position. I do the top 10. So the top 10 QBs, top 10 running backs, top 10 receivers, and top 10 defensive ends, and top 10 defenses. And that's where I go by. As other people are picking, I scratch that name off. If I get lucky enough to get any of the top 10 that I pick them. Because, I mean, we got QBs like Aaron Rodgers, Patrick Mahomes, Drew Brees, Andrew Luck, Matt Ryan, Baker Mayfield, Russell Wilson, Jimmy Garoppolo, and Deshaun Watson. So if I could get any one of those players, I would be happy. You know what I mean? So, and then you got top 10 running backs. You go through the list, you scratch out what people already picked, and then you pick that player that's still there. That's how I go about my fantasy. I do a little research, and that's just for my first string. My second and third string receiver and my second running back. I do it a little different. I watch highlight films during the preseason of who looks good, and I go for them. Like, this is actually a funny story real quick. I forget what his name is, but he played for the Indianapolis Colts. He played for the Indianapolis Colts. And I watched him all through preseason. And one of my buddies picked him up in our draft. And I forget who I traded him for, but he was actually on the IR, and he actually traded me for this guy. And this guy had the most amazing season he ever had. So I also look for that. I've also looked for guys that guys might think that aren't the best, and I try to make trades for that guy because I watch the preseason, and if somebody stands out in the preseason, I'll try to get him too.
Mm-hmm. Now, will you trade away a guy who's performing well if he's not one of your starters?
Oh yeah. So, if he's not, like, so for example, if I would put, say I got Alshon Jeffries and he was on my bench because I got Julio and Odell. We'll just say that, and he's on my bench, and my backup quarterback is friggin' Nick Foles. He's not having the best year, and somebody wants to trade me for Alshon Jeffries, and I add Nick Foles, and I'll add like another pick, like another scrub, and I would definitely make that trade all day.
Okay. And one last question for you: do you pay attention when you're drafting to make sure that you don't get too many players on the same bye weeks. Does the
Yep.
bye week come into account?
Yeah, for the most part. Sometimes you're just going to get unlucky and you're going to have one or two players, maybe three on the bye week at the same week.
Mm-hmm.
That's why you have to make sure you get decent backups. You got to make sure you got decent bench players because no matter how you look at it, like I said with the Drew Brees and the Michael Thomas, they're on the bye week in the same week because they're on the same team.
Yep.
So in that indication, I have to go with my backup quarterback and my backup receiver, and you got to make sure that they're at least decent and at least get you double-digit points.
So you don't want to pick the Saints D as well as the Saints kicker and Saints tight end all, and put them all on the same team, or else
definitely.
suddenly you're playing guys that aren't playing.
Definitely not. That's definitely something to take in consideration. Yep.
Now, one strategy I've used is to find a D that has an early bye week, and then trade and pick up the defense that's performing best that hasn't been picked up.
Yeah.
So I'll drop the defense that had the early bye week and pick up another team that is doing better than people expected and weren't drafted.
Right.
And you can always drop them and pick up your old one again. Usually it's still available after 1 week.
Exactly. Yep.
All right, let's do a real quick hits, and then we'll let people go. This is your ultimate fantasy team. One quarterback, who you got?
Aaron Rodgers.
2 running backs, who you got?
If I had to pick, like if I had to pick
if you got picks number 1 through 10,
I would pick Aaron Rodgers as my quarterback, Saquon Barkley, and Zeke Elliott if he got paid. My 2 or 3 wide receivers.
Okay.
Mine's 3. I don't know what you want me to do. 2
Yeah, give me 3 wideouts.
3 wideouts: Odell Beckham, Julio Jones, and either Michael Thomas or Devontae Adams. I don't care which one, but one of those 2.
Okay.
2 tight ends, I'd pick Travis Kelce and Zach Ertz.
Okay.
2 defenses, I would probably pick the Bears and the Rams.
And
the kicker?
1 kicker. Who is the best kicker in your mind?
1 kicker, I don't know. I feel like what's his name? Sebastian Janikowski, or he plays for the New England Patriots. He's pretty clutch.
Okay, sounds good. I was going to go with Garo Yepremian, but he hasn't played since the 70s.
Yeah.
All right. That's it for Fantasy Night on QBs on Reels. Thanks for Travis for being our expert fantasy guru. And we'll see you tomorrow night.
See you guys.